everyone. I hope you all had a great lunch, and I hope you're ready to be a part of a really awesome session. This is actually one of the sessions that I really enjoy in the past SACNAS conferences, and it's my pleasure to be hosting it today. I'm Dr. Katrina Tlaw, and I'll be the moderator for this session today. Along with me are our panelists, who are all awesome SACNAS scientists. And they're from a range of careers we have a PhD candidate, Yadira Ibarra, and then a student who also finished his PhD and is now a STEM coordinator, Dr. Rodolfo Jimenez. And we also have a faculty member from the University of Washington, Tacoma, Dr. Julia Iguere. So these are all our panelists today. And so the way this session will go is that, so first of all, we'll introduce ourselves briefly. We want to really have you see our stories and how we have gone through the educational path and now have our very diverse careers. So we welcome a lot of questions from the audience, and we really want you to get to know some of the challenges that we've gone through. I'm sure a lot of us are underrepresented minority students at these institutions also, and so we've gone through a lot of the same obstacles, whether that be cultural, academic, or just being away from home for so long. So we do welcome your questions. So the way this will work, we'll introduce ourselves, and there are actually 2 microphones in each of the aisles, and so once we're done introducing ourselves, we'll open the floor to all of you. And so please go to the microphones, ask a question of any of our panelists, and myself included. You can direct your questions to a specific person or just ask a general question in which one of us or a couple of us will answer. So since I'm up on stage already, I'll introduce myself and tell you a little bit about where I came from and where I'm going. Okay. So I was born and raised on the Navajo reservation. So for the Diné people out there, I feel it's proper to introduce myself in Navajo. Yat e she Katrina Tlaw Yanishya, Twahana Nishla, Deschini Bashichin, Twitchini Dashache, Bitahni Dashanala. So this is just our traditional way of introducing ourselves. So this is Many Farms, Arizona. This is where I grew up for the first 18 years of my life and where my whole family still lives. My maternal side, Navajos are maternal, so my other family is from Touchy, Arizona. So this is me as a baby. I'm the youngest of 4. I'm number 4 here, so I'm very blessed to have had 2 older brothers and 1 older sister. And I think really a part of my story is that I actually followed them. They were the ones who went to college first. They knew all about applying for scholarships and programs, so I'm really the baby here. This is my mom and dad, George and Rose Tlaw. They're very supportive and encouraging. And I think right off the bat, we have to acknowledge our family, because our family really is there for us and has been a really big support system for me. So I graduated from Chinle High School in 2001. Go Wildcats. So what do I remember about high school? Well, I wasn't into athletics. I didn't join a lot of clubs, but what I did do was read books. So I was a bookworm. I read so many books. I think I mostly remember that from high school. But also, in high school, I was able to finally get off the reservation and go to different programs. So I went to the Upward Bound program, the Exeter Summer program in New Hampshire. So this was my first time off of the reservation, and it was actually my first time being the underrepresented minority. Where I grew up, it was 99% Navajo students, so I had never felt underrepresented before. So once I graduated, I pretty much followed my older brother to Arizona State. So not only follow him, I had the exact same major as him in engineering. I took the exact same classes as he did. We had the same instructors. He was a year before me, so, and I lived with him. So I was really the tail following my older brother. But what's sad is that I was failing in a lot of my classes, and I was pretty miserable at Arizona State. And this wasn't because of family. This wasn't because of my brother. This was because I had a major that I didn't like. I was taking all of these classes that I was doing horribly in, but I didn't know what to do. So I finally decided to just start, around my sophomore year, to just start taking classes that I thought might interest me. So I took a biology class, and that changed everything. And I also coincidentally joined the MARC program, and this really changed my life. Part of the MARC program, I joined the lab of Dr. Ann Stone. This is a physical anthropology lab at Arizona State. And I got involved in a project that was looking at chimpanzee population variation using genetic markers. So this was my first exposure to research. I didn't even know what being a graduate student meant, so it was really a great experience. And in addition to this, I started going to SACNAS conferences as an undergrad. And of course, I started presenting, and this opened a whole new area for me. So in 2006, I graduated from Arizona State with my BS in biology and a BA in anthropology. There's me. And then afterwards, I was still not sure I wanted to go to grad school. So I joined the prep program at Arizona State, and this gave me the opportunity to go from, I'm not really sure what I'm interested in, to at the end, I was like, I have to go to grad school. This is what I really want to do. And it helped me narrow down the field I wanted to go to and provided me with a lot of support. So I applied to a lot of graduate schools and ended up choosing the University of Washington. So in 2008, I moved to Seattle. I knew one person in Seattle. I piled up my little car and my two parents who came with me and moved to Seattle. This was a big step for me just because I had never been away from Arizona or never lived anywhere but Arizona. But I was in the Genome Sciences department for 5 years, and this past August, I completed my PhD in Genome Sciences. Thanks. So it meant a lot to me to have my family in Seattle. My dad actually visited once when he drove me up there and then came back for when I finished. But it was really great to have them all there. So definitely family has been a big, important part of my academic career. So what's next? So I'm going to travel the world. There's a really great fellowship through UW called the Bonderman Fellowship, and the Bonderman Fellowship allows me to travel the world for 8 months. So this is what I'll be doing starting next month until next July. But that's enough about me, and I welcome any questions directly to me or the other panelists. But right now, our next panelist, Yadara, will give an intro. There you go.
Thank you. And thank you all for being here. So my name is Yadira Ibarra, and I'm a graduate student at the University of Southern California, where I'm pursuing a PhD in geobiology. And I'm actually from Southern California originally. I was born and raised in Los Angeles, and just wait for my slides to come up, but I'm the youngest. I'm number 4 of 5 girls, and here, let me click through it just so you can see the picture. So I'm from LA. I'm number 4 of 5 girls. My younger sister is actually not pictured there. But before I was born, my parents and my 3 older sisters moved to the US from a small ranch near Guadalajara, Jalisco, Mexico. And they settled in Boyle Heights in East LA, where later on I was born, and then my younger sister was born, and we were raised. And throughout So I don't think I could really say when I decided that I wanted to become a scientist, but for sure, by the time I was in the 4th grade in Mr. Wheat's class, I figured out that I had a really strong passion for exploration. And I think the reason is because in his class, he really taught us how to sort of be really passionate about looking at the world with a global perspective. And so like thinking outside of the classroom, thinking outside of Los Angeles, thinking, with the big picture and visualizing the world in a global perspective. And in the picture, if you could go back, you can see in the background, we actually built a space station in his classroom, a miniature space station in his classroom. So then I went on to the local high school, which is Theodore Roosevelt High School, where I ran track and field, and I also played basketball. And then when it came time for applying for college, I decided to leave Los Angeles and to leave the West Coast, and I moved to Providence, Rhode Island, where I attended Brown University. And up until that point in my life, I'd always been very brave about wanting to leave Los Angeles and wanting to leave LA and going out and exploring the world. But that first semester in college, it was really difficult for me to adjust to the rigorous courses that I was taking, on top of living away from home for the first time, and then also not really having anyone around that was going through the same kind of thing that I was going through. So what I really looked after was to try to find a family away from home. And for me, that became the Brown women's rugby team. I played rugby for my 4 years in college. And for those of you familiar with the sport, I was the scrum half on the team. And yes, that is a pile of snow in the background in that picture. And then it was through one of my teammates who was majoring in geology that I actually discovered geology in college. At the time, I was thinking about majoring in biology because I really like biology. But then I also really like geology, and I couldn't make up my mind. And being Brown, I didn't have to decide or choose, so I ended up majoring in both. I majored in geobiology. And the summer before my senior year of college, I participated in an REU program titled Interdisciplinary Science for the Environment. And it was at New Mexico Tech. And it was there that for the first time I realized that I can actually apply all these things that I've been learning in the classroom to actually conducting research myself and making discoveries for myself. So I participated in that program, and it just changed my life. And towards the end of the summer, the director of the program, Dr. Pullen, approached us, and he told us that he wanted us to submit an abstract to a conference about that research we had presented that summer, or conducted that summer, to present at a conference that was going to take place in the fall of that year in Salt Lake City, Utah. And so I submitted the abstract, and that conference was SACNAS, and that was the first place where I presented my research. And it was also the first place where I learned that I could actually have a career in science and in science research. And so during that conference, I networked a lot, and I met with several graduate programs, and including USC. And I ended up applying to to graduate school that fall, so just about a little bit over a month after the conference was over. I applied, I got all my paperwork together, I applied for graduate school, and then I graduated from college that following spring. And now, 4 years later, I'm, like I said, a graduate student at USC. I have two incredible advisors and mentors, Frank Corsetti and Will Barrelson, and those are just some pictures of me in the field this past year. And I just want to take this opportunity to thank SACNAS for opening so many doors for me and continuing to do so still. And this is going to be my 6th consecutive SACNAS conference, and I'm really excited for it and really looking forward to it. And thank you for your time.
All right, hello everyone. As they said earlier, I'm Dr. Rodolfo Jimenez Jr. I'm a STEM coordinator at UT Austin. And before I get started, real quick, because when I was a student board member, I took a picture when I actually had to talk, but that was just me VJing, and this one is I'm actually doing something You'll be tagged later. Okay. So as I said, I'm at University of Texas, Austin, where I am a STEM coordinator. Now, I'm glad that I'm able to speak at this event because I am Texas born, and I prove that if you look at all of my younger pictures, my baby pictures, I have a football in my hand pretty much all the time, or some kind of sport, a baseball, a glove, something. I was born with two families. I'm a grandson of two hardworking families, so this is from my dad's side. It's my grandfather Ramon and my grandma Lupita. She is here. And they had 4 boys, which back then was probably on the low end for Mexican-American families. But then we come to my mom's family, and there's about 15 brothers and sisters from my grandmother. So there, I guess you can say it was more traditional for back then. As I was growing up, I was always pushed to get as much education as possible to do good in school, as well as in sports, being that my whole family played sports. But I was always told school comes before sports. And when I got sick, one time I remember when I was small, I wasn't allowed to go to a soccer game. So that showed, because I didn't go to school, I couldn't play. So my parents instilled that very early on in my life, and thank them for that. It helps me separate and kind of put what's important. So like I said, and I always had an interest in science growing up. I always picked stuff up, wondered how stuff worked. In going to 6th grade, the summer before, I went to a science camp that they had at the junior high, and it was physics, chemistry, biology, and it was very interesting. I was like, oh, I want to do something with science. And I never knew really what a scientist was, even though it was right in front of me with my elementary teachers and junior high teachers. They had actually done some kind of research in their past. So I just knew I wanted to do something in science, some kind of medicine was what I was thinking. And I think a lot of people coming from our culture think that if I'm gonna do science, I have to do medicine. And I see that in kind of changing as well, which I'm glad is happening. And I said, I always knew I wanted to go to college. My parents always told me that I'm going to college, even though they never went. My father didn't finish till I think I was a junior in high school. He finished though, he finished. But they always pushed it on me to go to college, and they did it in the right way, in a positive way, in a strict positive way, let's say that. But I never really knew how to pay for it. I knew there was certain scholarships. The ones that always came to mind, because I was in Texas, was football scholarships, was sports scholarships. It's the only way I knew how it was going to happen. Go back to the slide. And so, as any good Texas boy would do, played football. Was okay, I was decent. I was hoping just to get some kind of free ride, to get a free education, because other than that, I had no idea really how to pay for it. So that's how I thought, good in sports, free college. Didn't really happen that way. I developed a heart condition my junior year, and I kind of learned that sports wasn't everything. This is a picture of me after about 3 plays gasping for air. People don't even recognize me in that because they say you look like a completely different person. It's like, I felt like a completely different person. I was wiped of any kind of energy, of any sort. But the funny thing was, after those 3 plays and after 5 minutes, I'd be back and ready and go in. And it was about 10 games into the season, the doctor said, okay, we need to take you out and see what's wrong with you. They discovered a murmur. They went in, they didn't see any holes in my heart or anything like that, so they put me on a recovery plan. They couldn't really determine what it was. I skipped a little too quick, that's okay. Can I go back? Yes, I can, all right. So my senior year, I came back, I played football, I threw discus and shot, and I decided I wanted to do that in high school. So I chose to go to Texas State University, one, for their physical therapy program, and I had actually grown interest into that, but also to try to play sports. A coach had recruited me to go walk on there, and like I said, I just wanted to play sports. That didn't happen, but I did make the track team after all of that. But what came of that is that my heart problem came back, in a sense. After practicing, I passed out a couple times at track practice from simple stuff. So after those 2 times of passing out, they told me to check with my heart doctors back home. So I did, I waited, I got off the track team, but one day I was going up some stairs and my heart rate just started racing and racing and racing, and I was sweating, and I wasn't breathing hard. I just felt really lightheaded, and I didn't know what was going on. So my roommate, who knew what my past and everything, I had told him, he took me to the hospital, and my heart rate was 256. So being that most of you are science, you should know that's really bad. My normal one should have been about 50 or 60. So it was pretty bad. People were looking at me as like, how are you still alive? I literally had people telling me that to my face, how are you still alive? In a good way. They were smiling. So that really did kind of change my life. It kind of, it brought me into science. And because of that, because of my heart condition, I had to have a defibrillator put into me, and I still have it today. Actually, I'm on my third one because they're on battery lives. But I like to call it my arc reactor. But it's not to that battery life yet. And my engineering friends keep asking me to put LEDs on it, and my doctors keep hitting me in the head when I tell them that. So because of that, I gave up track, and that actually led me to being into more science, because I was biology, pre-physical therapy, but then I started to think, like, how did this happen to me physiologically? And I went to go talk to my advisors, my chemistry advisor, Dr. Feeks. I don't know if she's here. I know some Texas State people are here. And she recommended I try the biochemistry program that was starting. And when I got into biochemistry, everything just kind of clicked. I was okay in biology, I was okay in chemistry, but for some reason you bring those two together, boom, everything clicks. Just like how you said, everything clicks. And it was great, I enjoyed it. I got into a lab. I actually didn't get into a biochem lab, I got into an inorganic synthesis lab from the beginning. I just wanted to do something. So I got into that. I learned of summer programs, I applied to them. I was able to do one at the University of Georgia. And for someone who had never left the state of Texas except to go to the border towns by Texas and to Disney World, I had never really been outside the state of Texas. So I went to the University of Georgia. I went to the other part of the South, the real deep South, as I was told then. And it was a different culture shock. We went to a Mexican restaurant, not that great. Again, I was, in the summer program, it was a few Hispanics and African Americans, so I wasn't completely in a culture shock. But when we would go out and we would see the Confederate flags just flying free, we would see the fraternities with the Confederate flags, I was like, oh, what am I doing here? And that also kind of happened at Texas State. It was more of a culture shock because I come from the Rio Grande Valley. So if you know there, it's 99.9% Mexican. And I don't say Hispanic or Latino with that because there you're probably Mexican or Mexican-American. There's a few Puerto Ricans and a few other people from Latin America, a few white people, and a few African Americans. But everything else is just Mexican-American. So that's why I say it in that sense. But once I got into that, I got to see what grad school would be like, what a different university, a bigger university would be like. And I just became a full-blown science nerd after that. I got into science, started wearing the funny t-shirts, everything like that. Everyone has them, we all have them. They're free from the tech, so that's why we have them. And as I got into that, I saw how there weren't too many people that looked like me in science. And that led me to first joining Maya's, if you could bring it back up. Sorry, I ramble sometimes. So I was with Maya's, which is Society for Mexican American Engineers and Scientists. And as you see here, this is one of our annual events, the Science Extravaganza, where we brought in 4th and 5th graders to learn the different fields of STEM. I did that for about 2 years, and it was really great. I mean, helping those kids learn what science is, introducing stuff they had never seen before or heard of, or even know what a scientist is. And so that got me a little bit more interested into outreach and a little bit of policy. So from Texas State, I went to UTSA for my PhD. In the cell molecular biology program, I got into an anthrax toxin lab. Really great, and yes, anthrax, but I didn't have to put on the big suit or anything like that. We were a BSL level 2, so just minimal amounts of the toxin. And there I learned more about SACNAS because one of the previous presidents, Dr. Luis Otto, was there. And then plenty of their members are here. Dr. Sin, Dr. Negrete is there. And just I learned of all SACNAS, and I got to go to one. I went to my first SACNAS in Kansas City. I think it was really being in that environment and experiencing the powwow for the first time was really a shocker. I'm in the video when they show it sometimes, I still see it. I still see myself there. I'm like, man, that seems like it was yesterday, but it was so long ago. And it just really, it just got me, and I got hooked. I wanted to help. I became part of SACNAS. When the position for a National Student Board member came up, and I was eligible for it, I applied for it. I didn't think I was going to get it. I was like, oh, there's other people who've been to it, but I applied, and I got it. And I got to see what goes on in DC at our meetings. I got to see all the stuff that the staff does behind the scenes, where everything looks nice and smooth, but it's just chaos, but it's organized chaos behind the scenes. So always thank the staff members that you see around here, because they do a lot of work. But because of being in SACNAS, my devotion to policy and to outreach, it really grew, became more political. And I saw that as something maybe I wanted to do as the other professors were doing. So I did finish at UTSA. I successfully defended, and I was actually up for a postdoc at UT. And then the sequester happened, and my funding got cut, or it was in limbo, as the proper way to say it. So I wasn't sure what was going to happen, but that PI that I was working for, he passed along a job opportunity that was there at UT for a STEM coordinator position, and it was pretty much everything I had done with SACNAS, with my outreach, my policy, allowing me to make a difference in students' lives without necessarily having to be a faculty member. So this was something I saw to take advantage of, I took it as a sign. And I applied, and I was lucky enough to get it, and it was a blessing. I love my job. I love the people that are there, who I get to interact with, just learn from people who have been doing this for years, and just seeing the effect that they have and what I would like to aspire to. So that's where I'm at the University, Texas, Austin, and I have no idea why it doesn't say Austin at the end. But I'm there at UT, and for the future, I'm not sure, looking into different stuff. As I said, my career path just does seem to be changing, but taking over the world is always in the back of the head. Probably not, but always think of that as your goal. That's my advice. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dr. Julia Aguirre, and I am at the University of Washington, Tacoma campus. I'm an associate professor in mathematics education. And I've been a part of SACNAS, I think, about 15 years now. So I'm going to start my talk a little bit. I realize I'm a lot older, first of all, than my panelists. But I'm going to start from the beginning. So I want to point out that I come from a multicultural, mixed heritage background. My father's Chicano, my mother is white. I identify as a Chicana white woman, woman of color. I see myself as an emerging bilingual. So English was my first language at home, and I'm still working on my Spanish. I want to point out that the blonde in the picture up there in the red dress is my sister, and she was adopted into our family when she was an infant, and she is part of the Osage and Cherokee tribe, and we tried really hard as a family to celebrate all the different kinds of traditions and cultural backgrounds that we represented. So when she had her quinceañera, she also had some native blessings, and as a part of her, as to honor her background. So below there is sort of my trajectory of where I am now. I was born in Hawaii. I like to say in the same hospital as our president. Yay. And my parents went there. My father was one of the first Latinos to play football for the University of Washington. And he got a coaching job out of when he graduated from college, and that's where he ended up, at the University of Hawaii and Punahou High School in particular. So I was born there, and then we moved back to Seattle, which is where my parents had met, and I went to school through there. Then Berkeley was undergrad, Chicago was my first graduate experience. I went back to Berkeley to get my PhD. I had my first academic position was in Santa Cruz, UC Santa Cruz, and now I'm at the University of Washington back with my family where I grew up. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about my high school experience. I went to Garfield High School in Seattle, and it's actually a very, very special place. It's a public school, but it's two schools in one. It was at the time when I graduated, it was half African American and half white. And I was in the honors program there, and I was probably one of 5 people of color in that honors program. And that's important because I also played sports. I was in basketball and soccer, and I was the only non-African American woman on the basketball team, and none of those women took courses with me. And I was one of the only people of color on the soccer team, and all the women who were white were in my classes. So I got this really interesting experience about being at Garfield High School, taking the top courses, and feeling like there's 2 schools happening, 2 experiences that I was able to engage in. And I was introduced to a program called MESA, Math, Engineering, Science Achievement. Anybody a MESA student? Excellent. So MESA introduced me to a wonderful world of being able to pursue math and science and engineering as a high school person, and then I applied to Berkeley and the University of Washington, and I decided to go. I got into Berkeley. Stanford said no. Just want to let you know. But I got into Berkeley, and I was a part of this program called the Professional Development Program. And I put on their website, they have an important sentence that we're going to keep coming back to. And PDP creates honors-level academic programs where students from diverse backgrounds come together in a shared pursuit of academic excellence. So I was in a group of people who we came to understand and learn, and we had we engaged in mathematics workshops. Some of you may know this program as Emerging Scholars. Do I see any hands of Emerging Scholars folks or PDP folks, or anybody had anything to do with Uri Treisman? So I see, okay. So I was part of that. Let's see if I can go back, oops. And that created a space for me to engage with other people who really liked mathematics and science. I, on the other hand, moved toward psychology, so that's where I got my degree in. But I always hung out with folks as part of the PDP program, and I ended up running PDP-type environments at the high school level, and also coordinating programs when I graduated from high school at the undergraduate level, so working with math programs like the Summer Math Institute. I found myself wanting to know whether I was at a crossroads about, am I going to go into math teaching, or should I pursue a PhD? And I consulted a lot of folks about that decision point. And at that time, many people said, you can always teach, but pursuing a PhD is something that you may not always be able to do. So I was really enjoying this culture of academic excellence with students of color, and I wanted to explore that more. So I applied to some graduate schools. I got in, and I had also, before I finished that, I also had done an internship with a man named Alan Schoenfeld, who is a leader in the field. And he had sort of turned me on to this world of trying to understand how young people learn mathematics. And I started to gravitate toward wanting to better understand the learning environments that can be constructed to support mathematics learning. So I finished my internship with him while I was working. So I worked for 3 years after I graduated. And I decided to apply to various graduate programs in math education, and I got into Cal, I got into University of Chicago, and I got into Harvard. Stanford said no again. What's going on? So I decided to go to the University of Chicago, And this is an important slide only because what I say here is that I got a full ride, which meant I had 4 years of full funding. But it was a bad fit for me. When I got there, similar to some of the other stories, I'd never been to Chicago. I was a West Coast baby, so Seattle and San Francisco. Chicago is a very different kind of town than Seattle or San Francisco. And the university was the first private university I'd ever gone to. I'd always been in public schools, and the university itself, it was the first time that I think I really experienced not only racism, but classism. I really wasn't sure about how to manage people's blaming poor folk for the education that clearly the city and other folks were not living up to their obligations. But there was a lot of deficit talk there that I had a hard time engaging in, and someone actually said, we're going to break you and mold you into a University of Chicago graduate. And I said, I don't break easy. So I decided that wasn't the best thing for me. And one of the things that I want you to understand is that you can always change your mind. So I was fortunate enough that the Alan Schoenfeld was willing to take me on as a student. And I came back to Berkeley to finish my PhD. I had no funding, so I worked my entire time while I was there, and then eventually got funding through fellowships and such. So I also point out 2 things. SACNAS is that's where, when I came back to Berkeley, where it entered in my life, and I became really interested in wanting to attract more people into math and science education, people who are devoted to the content areas, they love the discipline, and they have these strong commitments to education. And so I wanted folks to understand that there are another opportunity in which you can study the discipline you love in another kind of context, get it and do research, which I enjoyed a lot doing and trying to understand how instruction works. So I got my PhD in 2002, and I had what people call some people have called it like the Heisman Trophy, but I say it's that the Spencer Dissertation Fellowship is a fellowship that's offered. Many people apply, like thousands, and only 30 are given. And I happen to be one of the 30 that got that. So that's a big deal for folks in educational research. It speaks highly of the kind of work that you do. And my work has always been about math education and equity. And that's both a good thing, and it's also sometimes part of the challenge of being in academia when you do work around equity and social justice in the discipline. I also want to point out that MESA still followed me, so part of my work, I contributed back and wanted to coordinate MESA programs as part of the work that I did as a graduate student. So SACNAS and MESA were a part of my Cal experiences getting my PhD. Then I got my first job at the University of California, Santa Cruz, and I want to point out that I started as an acting assistant professor because I went there ABD. And if I had to do it over again, I probably would have done a postdoc. And I was older, so I also got pregnant the first year. And that also creates both an amazing thing, because I was older, I was 36 years old. And yet, I was trying to finish my dissertation and be an assistant professor. So those were challenges that were met, and I was able to, I had my beautiful daughter, Alessandra, and I finished the dissertation, and I kept on being a professor at the university. I was a part of the PI group who started a NSF-funded Center for Teaching and Learning called CEMELAS, the Center for Mathematics Education of Latinas and Latinos. And that place enabled me to do the kind of work that I wanted to do. We were a consortium of 4 different universities from around the country that specifically looked at research around the mathematical teaching and learning of Latinos. And yet, in that little red box is a period of my life where I wasn't quite sure academia was what I wanted, or whether I could do that. And throughout, SACNAS was a part of this life. I still continue to be a part of and contribute to the conferences. I did take a time out. I left the University of UC Santa Cruz and took a year to try to figure out if this was really what I wanted to do. And then I decided, and I'll explain that in a little bit, that yes, it is what I wanted to do, and I essentially started over at the University of Washington, Tacoma, as an assistant professor, and I just got through tenure last year. So just so you know, at my university, the good news is that 56% of the professoriate are women, 5% are Latino. So me getting tenure there was a pretty big deal. I also want to point out that I am also a PI on a new NSF grant that's really looking closely at culture responsive mathematics teaching. It's another consortium of 5 universities, and it's these kinds of projects like SAMELA and Teach Math that enable me to continue to do the work at the academic level, or in academia. So strengths and challenges. Let's start with the challenges. I also had health issues, my heart in particular. So just that can be something that's unanticipated. And family, I love my 2 little ones, Alessandra and Joaquin, who in that picture was 2.5 and about a month old maybe. He was pretty new. And now they're 11 and 9. And they do like each other, do you notice? So challenges also included publication setbacks. I didn't get my stuff published right after my dissertation. It was a real challenge. People were telling me that I needed to do different kinds of, I needed to have a different study. And that was really disheartening. And so it took me a while to get traction on my research, which contributed to the reason why maybe I wasn't cut out for academia. I felt like there's been different standards applied to me. Higher, I have to jump higher, be stronger, put up with a lot more crap sometimes. The social justice and equity focus is both strength and a challenge for me, because while that is what drives me, others may not understand that, and I've had my competency questioned. Is this really math education? Where's the math in this? So part of me is continue to have that resilience. Where do I find that resilience? Well, I found that in my family, my immediate family, and my husband and my children. I found it in the mentors that I've had, and I've had a variety of mentors, men and women, white and people of color, and I just have to say that, as I look back putting this together, there were sort of strategic moments when I was doubtful, and it was interesting that in those strategic moments, my mentors at that time said something to me. They were all Chicana women. I thought that was interesting, and the Aida Hurtado quote back there, "You belong in academia," was something that she told me when I said I was thinking about leaving. And she looked me in the eye, and that's what she said. And it was that helped me get through that really challenging time. Counter spaces, this is the big thing. The MESA, the PDP, the Upward Bound programs, the SACNAS, these are all what critical race theory calls counter spaces. Places in which people of color get together, can have their intellect affirmed, and they don't have to give up who they are to do that. And these are the places, this is why I love coming to SACNAS, because I look around and see all these different faces, and I don't get to see this when I go to math education conferences. So these counter spaces, these places that help us rejuvenate, to help us get through sometimes those microaggressions that we all face, is really important to find and to keep and to cultivate. and finding like-minded colleagues to help you and support you. And finally, for me, I just kept my focus on equity and social justice. And in the end, I was able to get tenure, which is an important thing. And in the future, I will continue to build on that progress. So, thank you.
Okay, great. So I hope this has given everyone a sense of who we are and where we're coming from. And I'll open up the floor. We have about 25 minutes for questions from the audience. So I see one person here. Oh, you don't have a question? Okay. Okay. So if you have a question, please stand by the microphones and then we'll get to you. But anyone? Okay, we have one person. And you can direct it to any of the panelists.
Hi, my name is Evie Marie Bravo. I'm from the University of Puerto Rico, Maya West. I just wanted to ask for the people who have their PhD and also have a heart condition, how did you make it true with your condition in this case? Because at this moment I was semi-diagnosed with high blood pressure, even though I am only 23 years old. And I'm thinking of pursuing my PhD, and I'm scared that I won't be able to finish just because if I'm in a stressful moment, I will just get my high blood pressure up and don't have the ability to actually finish my studies.
Oh, sure. So I got my defibrillator when I was 18. And I mean, it's scary. I'm sure when they told you had a high blood pressure, you're like, I'm 23. How do I have high blood pressure? I have a machine in me that 70-year-olds have. My doctors had to manipulate it multiple times because it's made for 70-year-olds. It is different. It is difficult. I think what helped was that I have a lot of patience. Also finding something that can take away that stress. For me was cooking. I cooked. It started off with just taking the typical college dish and making it a little bit fancier, so like ramen noodles with something else. And it went on from there. I actually started watching the Food Network and then started doing some other stuff. And actually my first year, that was my break during the day. I would wake up at 7, probably try to get an hour workout or something like that. Working out also helps with the heart too, I've heard, and I keep doing it. Then I would be at lab and studying and everything. Then I'd come home probably about 6 o'clock, do what I could in about 30, 45 minutes, eat in 15 minutes, 20 minutes, fall asleep on the couch for 5, and then go back to lab to study and go over stuff. Taking your medication is always good. Having parents who are always on you about it and obsessing over it more than you. And you can't think about it. You really can't worry. It's going to be in the back of your head, but you can't let it control your life. You have to fight it. You have to live with it. It's something you can't really make go away. Unless you do that in lab, you figure out something to take away the high blood pressure completely. But other than that, you just have to find how to cope with it and just deal with it, basically, and just live your life like you would.
Thank you so much.
All right, good afternoon. This is for Dr. Jimenez and the rest of the panelists. How do we continue to increase the pipeline of students of color into STEM fields? Are there any successful models that you've seen in your work or in your research that will continue to help many programs and institutions continue to get students of color into STEM fields?
I think from where I'm at now, everything has to be hit early on. It has to be hit in the elementary. So, education is so important, and it's funny that I've gotten to this position, and I still get emails from science, their weekly emails. There was just about a paper talking about how poverty plays a role in brain development. It's just you're always worried about money. So you see that as a little kid, your parents are worried about money, so you're worried about money. You can't process the harder stuff better as someone who's well off or who doesn't have that stress, and it hurts you from progressing like everyone else, or from having a normal mind. And I just think starting at an early age in some sense, especially in our lower income areas, promoting education and just getting them to do some kind of stuff, getting it early on, showing them that they can get out of there, that they can go to the Stanfords, to the UCLAs, to the UTs, that it is possible for them. That's what I believe, hitting it early on.
I would also add, you can't hear me? I'm sorry. I would also add that there are many programs that actually work. And MESA, right? PDP, Emerging Scholars, those all are designed to go through the pipeline. And what's very special about them, again, is that the focus is on academic excellence, and you don't have to give up who you are to enter into those spaces. So the more places that we can cultivate that kind of environment in which students aren't questioned when they walk into a room, and this happened again very recently at a middle school where it was a school that was, again, half African American, half white, and an African American child walked into an honors math class, and the teacher proceeded to ask that child, "Are you sure you have the right class?" So until we can start to, again, address those kinds of inequities, we as a group of people can start to do that. So I agree that it has, in some cases, to do with poverty, but we live in a very racialized, gendered space. Education is that way, and so we have to start taking on and disrupting those kinds of inequitable structures.
All right, thank you.
First off, I'd like to thank you for your talks. They were all inspiring, especially for us undergraduates here. Gives us a good lookout for the future. My question is for Dr. Claw. I'm also a hopeful geneticist in the field. How do you plan to follow your research into the Ponderman, because I know you said it was 8 months, the award, and then what are your plans for your postdoc?
So the Bonderman is 8 months, and so actually a part of the stipulations of the fellowship is that I participate in no academic program, and I don't work, and I travel alone. So I actually can't really continue my research, but I'll be applying to postdocs while I'm traveling. So I plan, once I come back, I do plan on obtaining a postdoc and starting next summer.
Research done in the travels, or is it?
So I do have a theme, so I'm not doing any research as I travel, but my theme, since I work in population genetics, and every day we would work with samples from indigenous populations from Africa, from Asia, from all of these countries, and for me as an indigenous person, I wanted to know, who are these people? What are their stories? So that's what my goal of this travel is to do, is to learn who they are, who these indigenous people are, and how do they feel about people using their samples, and population genetic history, or how's it affecting the community, if anything at all. So that's my personal goal for my traveling.
Thank you.
Thanks. And we can pick someone then. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Emily Harris. I'm from DePaul University in Chicago. I am sort of new to SACNAS, and we have a faculty coordinator who this recently brought to our attention the idea of stereotype threat. And I know all of you expressed some, realization that you're looking around your fields or the people in your fields and you're not seeing a lot of people like you. I was wondering if you could maybe address if you've ever experienced that stereotype threat, how you dealt with it and how you help others around you deal with it.
I think, Yadira, maybe this is a good question for you.
Yeah, I mean, as a geologist, there aren't a whole lot of women, for example, that are geologists. So in a way, it is kind of difficult to, be in a department where there aren't that many women faculty. But in terms of like being Mexican or being Hispanic, I don't think that I've seen any kind of stereotype like that, and at least while I was at Brown and while I was at here at USC. But yeah, I don't know if anyone else has anything else to say.
So I just wanted to interject. It's more about like an internal feeling, like you holding yourself back or having a mentality that because you're a woman or because you're of color.
Oh yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, so sort of like what they call the imposter syndrome, sort of. Yeah, so that's definitely an issue, and that's something that I've dealt with sort of all my life in a way, like, am I really here because I deserve it, or am I here because I actually, that's really hard, but really, I mean, what you have to do is just work hard and try to overcome that, because that's a battle within yourself. That's not, something that you have control over, and that, you just don't worry about other people and just go out there and do the best you can and try to overcome that. Yeah, it's sort of always gonna, for me, I know it's still there, but, every day I work hard and I do my best, and yeah.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
No,
but I also want us to understand, especially with the stereotype threat, is that it's still, with that particular thing, as you were talking about, it's sort of an individual sort of focus. It's almost internalized. And I personally find that a problematic viewpoint, because most of the time when people are feeling like their competency is questioned, it's because it is. It is being questioned. And it's being questioned because you don't fit a particular mold, or you are pushing on a norm or the dominant thinking at the time. And so part of understanding your views of sort of your internal struggles, do I belong here, is that that most likely you are receiving messages that raise the question or tell you, I don't know if you belong here. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's understanding that relationship around both individual and its relationship to the institutional and the structures that and the communities that we work in. So my advice, again, is to find networks of people, find those counter spaces that you can be in that allows you to be who you are, to affirm your academic excellence, which you have, and allows you to affirm your cultural and linguistic identity.
Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Veronica Villasenor. I'm an undergrad at UCLA and first-year transfer from College of the Sequoias, and my question is for Dr. Aguirre. Is that you had your bachelor's in psychology, but you're working in math right now? Like, how are you going? Like, are you using your bachelor's in psychology at all, and why did you go to math from psychology?
I only had 5 minutes. I think I went over that time, so I glossed over last time. My experiences with mathematics was challenging my freshman year when I was at Cal. And so I got through the calculus series with the PDP program. But I found myself not really gravitating toward, I didn't know if math really, I don't know if I just math didn't really like me at that time. And I was interested in psychology. But after continually working in a place like PDP, I began to really appreciate and better understand the mathematics. So when I graduated from Berkeley and was working for those 3 years, I actually took all my math over again at a community college. So I took all the calculus course series the first 2 years and had the math background of an engineer, essentially. And it also allowed me to engage in, I really do teach. I enjoy teaching. I like teaching mathematics. So that combined level. Now, I'm not a mathematician. I don't claim to be. And if I had to do it over again, I probably would have tried to have majored in mathematics. But I did what I could do with the kinds of timeframes that I was working with. And I'm glad I went to a community college and took my math over again. I appreciated that more and really fell in love with that discipline at that time after I had graduated from Berkeley. And I was able to engage in an internship with people who helped me develop that sense of understanding about math learning and math teaching, and that's really where I found my passion.
And also, this is directed to the whole entire panel. You guys didn't start off with like a set goal, right? You guys switched majors. And how did, like, what made you find that passion? Like, why did you choose the majors that you were in, that you majored in? What I'm trying to say, like, you started off in engineering, and then you went to biology and anthropology, and then.
Yeah. So for me, I just realized I was just following my brother because I didn't know what engineering was. I didn't know what graduate school was. So, and these were higher level courses at Arizona State, at any university. So I was finally able, I felt like I had to give myself permission to explore different things. So I took a ton of different classes, rock climbing and, and then biology. And then I found what I really liked, and it just sort of clicks for you. And physical anthropology is very close to population genetics, so I thought it wasn't that big of a change for me.
And also, is the click easy? Like, does it come natural to you? Like, you don't have to work as hard?
No. I think I still have to work as hard as any student, but I just enjoy it more.
And anyone else?
I also switched from majoring in biology and then to geobiology, and for me that was an easy transition because growing up I always sort of what drove me into science was these like really existential questions, like where do we come from, like where did life start here, or did it come from other planets, or these kinds of things have always been in my mind growing up, and I thought that biology was the way to go. And when I was in high school, I never took any geology classes, so I didn't know that. I knew geology, I knew about geology, but I never took any classes on it, so I didn't really, go into depth in it. And it wasn't until college that I discovered it. So then I was able to put 2 and 2 together, bio and geo, and then, for me, it actually ended up working out that way. So.
Okay. So in the interest of time, we'll go on to the next person.
Hi, my name is Maria Ortiz, and I recently graduated from Cal State Long Beach with a degree in marine biology and a minor in microbiology. And I took up my minor a lot later in my program, and I realized that that's truly what I wanted to do. And so far, I've kind of taken a year off from going into grad school, and I realized that that's what I want to do. So I just wanted to know what your recommendations are to break down those barriers when you're not in school and you don't have somebody like telling you what to do, to apply and to contact people, especially because funding is quite scarce right now. So I don't know if you guys have any advice.
Well, I think you're at the right place for that. So, I would really take advantage of, for example, SACNAS, take advantage of the conference, of being here and meeting people and making those connections. For example, when I was in college, I decided pretty late that I wanted to go to graduate school. I did the whole process in about less than 2 months. And one of my fears was that if I took time off, then it would be hard for me to come back. But it's important to keep those connections with the university, and yeah, so take advantage of being here and do your best to look at programs here and meet people and talk to people and network.
And definitely go to conversations with scientists later this evening, because if you meet a faculty member who really wants you to apply to their school, they'll help you. Well, give you a better chance.
Awesome.
So we're ending at the end of this session, so I think we have enough time for one more question.
Of Texas. And this is an open question to the panel. Coming from traditional backgrounds, did you ever feel any added pressure to start a family early? And if so, how did you balance that with the pressure of pursuing academia? Whoever hits the chord with can answer.
As the panel. Let's say what I call my little boy is my dog. And I got him right after I finished undergrad. I was able to raise him in the spring, and then I gave him to my parents because once I got to grad school, it just wasn't, it was ignoring him. So he's with my parents and he's the third child. But that's the only thing I can say with little Wolf as my baby boy. Other than that, I mean, I never had pressure to start a family. My parents had me when they were 20. I know I came a lot earlier than planned. And they knew they would push me for education. They would never really push family. Even my grandparents, I mean, I had cousins that were getting married and having kids, and friends coming from the Valley had kids when they were in high school, and that was kind of the norm back there, and I didn't want that. So I made sure that if I wanted to start a family, or when I start a family, I'm gonna be prepared. I'm gonna have somewhat of a career path going. I'm gonna be somewhat financially secure and take it from there. And that was always in my mindset, and I think I got that from my parents because I saw how hard it was, not hard, but the challenges that it brought at such an early age. And I mean, they were just working, and they always put it into my head, you can start a family at any time. My grandpa always told me, is like, hey, don't rush into anything. Your grandpa here didn't get married till he was 32. So he always put, and that's something you may not expect from a Mexican grandfather or grandparent saying, hey, wait, I waited till I was 32. So I never had great pressure from me. So I was appreciative of that. I mean, and I do want to start a family. It's just, I have to have it. I'm a scientist, I have to plan it. I have to plan it, and so I'm, in that sense, that's my answer for that one.
Thank you.
Wait.
That's why you're the females.
Do you guys want to field it? Do you have? Okay. Speaking as someone who's had 2 children, look, I've known other graduate students or people who've had their kids during graduate school, and some found that was easier to coordinate schedules and things like that when they had their child then. And there's never going to be a perfect time. So, you know, I can't tell you when you should start a family, but if that's something that you want, I want to encourage you to be able to do that. When I was going through my doctoral program, there were very, very few women who had children. And if they did, I didn't have any role models. It was really hard. But when I had my children, the graduate students that were in my doctoral program saw more of a generation of women faculty who were going to have children and have an academic career. It's hard, and is it worth it? Yes. And there's going to be lots of both challenges and strengths. I look into my children's eyes every single day, and they help me keep going and doing the work that I want to do. And yeah, it's really hard sometimes because I have to put them to bed and then, you know, still work sometimes. So I just want to reassure that there's never a perfect time, and you can plan all you want. Sometimes it happens and sometimes it doesn't. So, you know, the young ladies out there, understand it's different than for men.
Very much so, very much. That's why I felt I couldn't answer that question really to sense, because I've had some colleagues that have had children during graduate school, postdoc, and the challenges that they met, I take my hats off. And whoever starts a family during grad school or even postdoc, you're gonna find that in postdoc, some PIs might tell you, we don't want you to start a family. They'll probably word it in a different way so they don't get sued. But you're gonna find that a lot, and I've seen that, and it's a challenge, and the women who have come upon it and they've taken it head on and they've kicked butt. So, like I said, my hats are off to them, because to all women, because in science, it's just another uphill battle that they have to go through just for being a woman, and it shouldn't be that way. So.
Okay, well, thank you.
That so those that are interested in this discussion, look for that session somewhere.
Okay, yeah, thank you. So look for that session in your agenda. But right now, I would just like to thank all the panelists. And if you have additional questions, there was a lot of people we couldn't get to. Just find one of us during the conference and talk to us. So thank you.